Hey guys, tonight we going to take a slow walk through time right into the heart of the Ottoman Empire, just as the sun begins to rise over Istanbul. You not in your bed anymore, you in a sea of tents on the edge of a military encampment. The canvas flaps flutter gently in the breeze, and a chill still clings to the grass beneath your bare feet. You can hear it before you see it. A low, slow rhythm boom, boom, boom. It's not thunder, it's not your imagination. It's the start of something ancient, something strange, something sleepy. The Janissary Metar Band, warming up for the day. You probably won't survive this morning if you try to plug your ears with a pillow, because in the Ottoman military, music wasn't optional. It was discipline, it was psychology, and it was loud. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd also love to know where you listening from and what time it is right now. Drop it in the comments, whether you're in a quiet dorm at 1 a.m. or halfway through a road trip nap. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The morning is still young, but the Janissary musicians have already begun to stir. You shuffle past rows of bleary-eyed soldiers, a few already tending to fires or stretching out the stiffness from their sleep. And there, in the center of the camp, stands the Meteran, the Ottoman military band. Their tall, felt hats make them look vaguely like walking candles, and their movements are deliberate, ceremonial, and unhurried. The first sound is almost like a heartbeat. That's the case, a massive kettle drum strapped to the back of a mule or cart, pounded with padded mallets the size of small pumpkins. The rhythm is unrelenting, like waves lapping against your ears. It's not music you tap your foot to. It's music that plants itself in your chest and demands that you listen, whether you like it or not. The Janissary band always played at dawn. It was both alarm clock and mood setter. If you were an Ottoman soldier, it meant time to rise, time to assemble, time to prepare. If you were an enemy soldier hearing that drumming from miles away, it meant the Ottomans were coming in. They had a band. Historians agree the Metar tradition dates back at least to the 13th century, possibly earlier. The Seljuk Turks had something similar, and by the time the Ottomans were properly stomping across the map in the 15th century, the band was a daily fixture in both camp and palace life. But there's still debate over exactly when the Metar became its own institution, with dedicated members and full-time roles. Some suggest it was during the reign of Sultan Murad the First. Others argue the roots go deeper into Turkic tribal traditions. And you're standing right beside them now, caught between sleep and history. A cymbal crashes suddenly, clang, and you flinch. One of the cymbal players raises an eyebrow at you with a sleepy kind of pride. The cymbals are heavy bronze, not the shiny, polished kind you might see in a modern orchestra, but thick and dulcet to cut through battlefield chaos, not impress a dinner party. Behind them, a row of men lift their zurnas, double red woodwinds that sound like a bagpipe in a hurry. When they all play at once, the effect is unsettling, to say the least. Not because it's bad, but because it's relentless. The melody spirals upward in minor keys, twists into an almost droning pattern, then dips low again, echoing off the tent walls. One of the most overlooked facts about Metar music is that it was intended to soothe, was meant to invigorate, or terrify, or simply remind everyone that the Sultan's will was not a suggestion. You're beginning to realize that the repetition, the loudness, the proud stomping of boots, all serve a purpose: to overwhelm your senses so that everything else fades into the background. The music isn't just accompaniment, it's architecture, a sonic fortress. The meter ensemble marches in a formation that mirrors the military's own hierarchy. Every step and gesture is coordinated. Even the way they turn is rehearsed. The head musician, or meterback, gives a subtle nod, and the tempo changes slower now. Almost gentle. Almost. You close your eyes, letting the rhythm wash over you like a second heartbeat. And then comes a quieter moment. The zurnas drop out, and for a brief stretch, it's just the soft thumping of drums and the shimmer of cymbals played with a caress rather than a clash. It's oddly hypnotic. The music takes on a strange duality, both too loud to sleep through and just soothing enough that you want to. There's a story often passed down in Istanbul's back streets, half history, half lullaby. It goes like this. A young child, lost in the palace garden, wandered toward the military barracks where the metar band was practicing. Rather than cry or run away, the child curled up near the kettle drums and fell asleep right there, rocked into slumber by vibrations in the earth. Whether that story is true or not, you're starting to understand how it could be. Even the dissonance, the shrill piping, the military strictness, it all begins to blend into something rhythmic, something ancient, something strangely calming. You glance around the camp. The soldiers aren't marching yet. Some sit quietly, eyes half closed, just listening. Others sharpen weapons to the beat, as if syncing their breath with the music. There's a calm before the storm quality to the whole thing, except the storm isn't coming. It's already here, and it's wearing pointy hats and playing brass spoons. You sit on a low wooden bench, the dew clinging to your sleeves. The music continues. There's no climax, no verse, no chorus. Just waves and waves of sound, purposefully primitive and gloriously stubborn. This isn't music designed to win competitions. It's music to make you feel small beneath the Sultan's sky. And in that smallness, you feel safe. Because here, in the early morning haze, with the meter filling the world with crashing, clanging, hypnotic noise, nothing else matters. Not your deadlines, not your group chat, not even the camel that just sneezed behind you. You yawn, you settle in, you listen. The music doesn't stop, only shifts, as you sit there, letting your eyelids grow heavier with each beat of the keys. The meter ensemble continues its morning ritual. There's something surprisingly formal about it, even here in the early haze of camp life. You start to notice things, the way each musician holds himself, spine straight as an arrow. The subtle choreography in how they pass a look from one player to the next before a new phrase begins. These men are soldiers, yes, but also artisans, performers, and keepers of tradition. Now that your ears are beginning to adjust, the instruments reveal their layers. The high-pitched shriek you first thought of as just noise from the zurna now sounds like a sort of musical hot-cutting, precise, circling the sky. Underneath, the deep, almost mumbling roll of the bass drums. Between them, a chime of tiny hand cymbals, zil, delivering what might be described as punctuation marks in a sentence made of thunder. You wonder how they can play this early in the day with such energy and ceremony. The answer is one of the many odd little details that make the meter so memorable. Their daily rituals weren't just about music. They were about sacred duty. These weren't hired performers or conscripts forced into musical service. The Janissary band was considered an elite subset of an elite force. To join the Mataran was to be chosen, trained, and honored. You didn't just show up with a flute and hope for the best. You were inducted, and yes, you had to wear the hat. The Metar uniforms might be one of the most quietly amusing sights in all of Ottoman history. Tall, conical hats, called birk, often bright red or green, towered over the heads of the musicians, like exaggerated traffic cones. Add in long robes, braided sashes, gold-trimmed sleeves, and pointy slippers, and you've got an ensemble that looked like what might happen if a wizard joined a marching band. The uniform wasn't just for show, it was full of symbolism. The colors often matched the banner of the regiment or the whims of the sultan. The shape of the hat, some say it represented a flame symbolic of divine inspiration. Others claim it echoed ancient Turkic warrior attire. Historians still argue whether the Janissary costume evolved purely from practicality or was intentionally theatrical. And then there were the sandals, not boot sandals. Imagine stomping into battle in open-toed leather footwear, the smell of brass polish in your nose, a cymbal strapped to your side. If you think you'd look ridiculous, that's kind of the point. The Meta band wasn't meant to blend in. They were supposed to be seen and heard long before the army arrived. In the Ottoman imagination, sound was power. The Meta didn't just play to amuse the Sultan or wake the troops. They played to strike fear into the hearts of enemies before a single sword was drawn. Volume was their weapon. And if the giant drums didn't get you, the visual spectacle probably would. Picture this: 24 men, all in brilliant colors, some with massive drums hanging from their waists, others carrying foot-long flutes, and still more clanging metal discs above their heads like dinner plates in a windstorm. It was pageantry meets prelude. And yet, here in the camp, it's not terrifying, not anymore. The more you sit with it, the more this music feels like a kind of lullaby. A very noisy, symbol-infused lullaby. A lullaby all the same. You find yourself breathing in rhythm. There's a soothing quality in its relentlessness. The beat never surprises you. It just continues. Like a grandfather clock, or ocean waves, or the background noise of a world that never sleeps but never truly wakes. You look around at the other soldiers again. One is braiding his beard. Another polishes his belt buckle with the corner of his sleeve. These are small, mundane acts, but they're being carried out to a soundtrack that just a few hours from now might accompany a battlefield. That's the strange duality of the Metar. Their music was both terrifying and calming, violent and ceremonial. It meant death in one context and breakfast in another. One little-known tradition among the Metar musicians was the inclusion of spoons. Yes, spoons. Specifically, large wooden ones, often carved from walnut or chestnut wood, and clicked together like primitive castanets. These weren't just for rhythm, they were considered good luck charms, and in some cases, personal talismans. Some musicians carved tiny prayers into the handles. Others swore that the weight of their spoons affected the weather. Don't ask, musicians are superstitious everywhere. Occasionally, a pair of spoon players would break off into their own little sub-rhythm, clicking and clacking just slightly off the beat, like a counter-melody made of kitchen utensils. The sound was oddly delicate, like wind knocking against shutters. You listen to it now, just beneath the crash of drums and the warble of woodwinds, and it makes you smile. Who knew battle music could be whimsical? There's a legend about Sultan Mehmed II, the one who conquered Constantinople. They say that before his troops stormed the city walls in 1453, he had the meter play through the entire night. Not a pause, not a rest, just beat after beat, note after note, until the defenders inside the city were maddened by the constant noise. The psychological warfare worked, though historians debate whether the story is poetic exaggeration or partially true. Either way, it's a fitting image, a city cracking not under cannon fire, but under the weight of endless drums. You open your eyes to find the sun a little higher now. The mist has burned off, revealing more of the camp rows of tents, a field of supplies, and the dark line of the forest beyond. The music is still going, maybe quieter, or maybe you've just stopped noticing the volume altogether. It's become part of the scenery, like birdsong or running water. A musician breaks formation and walks slowly to a small bench, placing down his zurna with gentle care. Another takes his place without missing a beat. No applause, no nods, just the music, flowing like a river, and you're drifting, not into danger, not into battle, but into something else, a kind of quiet, a softness just under the noise. The sleepy warmth of tradition, worn proudly like a red felt hat and sandals. You're walking now slowly, dreamily through the camp, trailing the echo of those steady drums. They don't fade, not really. Even as you move away, the sound lingers in the corners of your hearing like the memory of a heartbeat. It's hard to tell where the music ends and the world begins. Every gust of wind feels rhythmic. Every creak of tent fabric sounds like part of the ensemble. You start to realize this isn't just a band. It's an atmosphere, a presence. You pass a cluster of young recruits gathered near a cookfire. They're pretending not to listen to the meta, but their fingers tap unconsciously on their thighs, matching the beat. One of them hums a few bars of the melody under his breath, badly. You smile, even off-key. The song has found a home in his bones. This is how you become Ottoman. You think not just by learning to march or handle a sword, but by absorbing this strange, brassy lullaby into your spirit. Not far from here sits the band's tenta, surprisingly large affair, stitched from canvas dyed, a dull rose color. You duck inside. It's dim and cozy, lined with cushions and wooden crates stacked with instruments. There's a smell in here, warm and leathery. Old drumheads, brass, polish, maybe a bit of dried fruit. One corner is draped with colorful scarves, prayer beads, and an alarming number of spoons. A man with an enormous mustache is gently tuning a zurna. He nods at you, then goes back to work, his fingers dancing across the holes in silence, rehearsing a solo only he can hear. You settle beside him, trying not to disturb the moment. He starts talking not to you exactly, but to the space around you both. He tells you about the music's purpose, how the meter's rhythm was meant to keep soldiers moving, even when their legs gave out. The beat, he says, goes deeper than muscle. It gets into the heart, into the sleep, even into the dreams. You nod, though you not sure whether you agreeing or just slowly slipping into that half-dreaming state he's describing. He pulls a long piece of paper from a scroll case. On it are strange notations, squiggles, little arrows. Meter music wasn't originally written down using standard European notation. It relied on memory, oral tradition, and something called usel, a rhythmic cycle, almost like a time signature, but broader, more poetic. One usel might last several minutes, looping and circling like a piece of braided rope. He taps the parchment lightly, and murmurs a phrase you've heard before. Asterisk Neva Pestravi. Asterisk, it's the name of a piece, one of the oldest in the Meter canon, supposedly composed during the reign of Sultan Selim I, though historians still argue whether it truly dates back that far. The melody is slow, windingless battle cry, more trance. It builds without rushing, repeats without growing stale. You hum the first few bars without realizing it. The mustached man smiles. Outside, the band is still playing, not the full roar, now just a small group rehearsing in loops. The melody dances lazily between zurna and drum, with the cymbals stepping in like polite applause. You step back out into the light and let it wash over you. Near the edge of the field, an old Janissary sits sharpening a dagger with a whetstone the size of a goat's horn. His beard is silver, his eyes sunken but alert. You ask him if the music ever got too loud. Too loud, he echoes, chuckling. Child, it was never loud enough. That music kept our feet moving when we hadn't eaten in 2 days. It made our enemies think we were twice as many. It rattled the bones of kings. And when it finally stopped, he trails off. You wait, but he never finishes the sentence. Maybe the silence still lingers. The metar was used for more than just military ceremony. It played during royal processions, court celebrations, circumcision festivals, and diplomatic events. In fact, one of the earliest documented accounts of metar music outside the Ottoman Empire comes from a French ambassador who returned home both amazed and partially deaf. European composers like Mozart and Beethoven even wrote pieces inspired by the Turkish style, mimicking the percussion-heavy march with clashing cymbals and Janissary-like flourishes. One of the quirkiest chapters in this cultural exchange took place in Poland. In the 18th century, Polish noble families started hiring their own Ottoman-style bands to show off at garden parties and parades. Some of them copied the instruments, the costumes even, the music. But one nobleman apparently insisted that his band play only while walking backward, claiming it made the notes more introspective. Historians debate whether this man was a visionary or just deeply confused. As you return to the center of the camp, you notice that the band is changing tempo. It's still repetitive, but looser now, less martial, more reflective. It feels like the part of a song you might hum while cleaning your sword or staring into a fire. It's not quite a lullaby, not quite a battle chant, something in between. One musician leans against a barrel and softly taps his drum with a single finger, just to keep the rhythm in his bones. Another sits cross-legged, carving new holes into a reed for his zurna, testing each note with a soft blow. You settle beside them, lulled by the gentle thrum. The band is slowing down just a little, but the pattern goes on. Circle after circle, beat after beat. You let your breath fall into step with it, inhale with the rise of the melody, exhale with the cymbal's kiss, and somewhere, just barely, beneath it all, the spoons begin again. The sun has sunk a little lower now, and with it the band's tempo. The drums are no longer pounding, they're padding, coaxing. Even the zurna, normally so piercing, seems to whisper rather than wail. You're sitting on a woven mat near the food tent, the scent of lentil stew and dried apricots mingling with the mellow swirl of woodwinds. Someone hands you a cup of something warm and sweet, probably solid, a milky orchid root drink so thick it clings to the cup. You sip slowly. It coats your throat like liquid velvet, the perfect pairing for the sleepy beat in your ears. A young band apprentice plops down beside you, balancing a miniature drum in his lap. He's maybe 15, with sharp eyes and calloused fingers. "You know," he says, without preamble, "this one they're playing now, it's for the march home." You raise an eyebrow, and he nods solemnly. There's a whole set of meter pieces just for the return, after the fighting, after the blood. They say those songs help carry the ghosts back to the earth. He taps out the rhythm with his thumbs, soft, symmetrical, like footsteps retracing themselves. It's a funny thing, you think. A military band known for thunderous marches, but here it is gently scoring the act of returning, like a lullaby for the land itself. Instruments weren't chosen randomly either. The zurna wasn't just loud, it could carry over mountains. The davul didn't just set tempo, it mimicked thunder to frighten enemies and rally tired soldiers. And those tiny clashing zilfa cymbals, they were like punctuation, accenting every musical sentence with a sleepy shimmer. But the real heart of it all, some argue, was the Ks, a pair of enormous kettle drums mounted on camels during campaigns. Yes, camels. Imagine being in 16th century Hungary and suddenly hearing the earth itself begin to throb, and then watching as two camels crest the hill, each carrying a drummer beating these massive bronze bowls. Historians still argue whether the sound actually caused psychological terror or just profound confusion. Either way, it worked. You sip your salep again, and someone in the band hits a KS note. Even here, far from the camel's back, you feel it in your bones. A deep, low boom that settles somewhere near your spine and echoes out into the dusk. A bird calls overhead, a lazy gull riding the warm evening air. One of the cymbal players raises an eyebrow at the timing and adds a single clash in response, as if to say, "Yes, we heard you. Thanks for your contribution." You smile. These musicians may serve the Sultan, but they're still performers. Still a little theatrical. Still in love with their own rhythms. The Janissaries, those elite infantrymen who guarded the empire, walk past, armored but relaxed. Some of them hum along. One of them, clearly off-duty, is braiding his mustache into a complex shape that suggests both boredom and pride. The meter band, it seems, was woven deeply into their daily lives. They woke to it, marched to it, sometimes even fell asleep to it, and no wonder. A full performance could last hours, with subtle shifts in tone, structure, and rhythm. What began as a rousing march might slowly wind down into a gentle, instrumental ballad, almost indistinguishable from a cradle song. A Janissary sitting near you turns and mutters, "You haven't heard Usasak Pesrivi until you've heard it at sunrise. It hits different when the sky's still orange." You ask if that piece is a favorite, and he shrugs. "It's just the one that makes the birds dance," he says, deadpan, before standing and walking off without another word. You glance toward the edge of camp, where a few older musicians sit cross-legged in a semicircle. They're not performing for anyone now, just themselves. One of them, the oldest by far, has a long white beard and a kudum nestled in his lap. He plays so gently that you can barely hear the taps unless you really lean in. His rhythm feels like a heartbeat beneath a blanket. A younger player leans forward, watching his hands intently. He's doing usul aksak, semek, someone whispers, a complex, rhythmic, cyclo-regular, wandering. The kind of beat that sneaks up on you and only makes sense after you've heard it a few dozen times. It's a rhythm, you realize, made for walking while thinking, or falling asleep while pretending you're still awake. A beat built for twilight. The apprentice from earlier nudges you. This one's about caravans, he says. Or maybe camels. Historians don't agree. Of course they don't. Historians never agree on anything. Whether the meter's origins lie with Central Asian shamanic drumming, Persian military music, or some particularly enthusiastic Byzantine festival is still up for debate. Some scholars argue that the first Meterhanda, official Ottoman music guild, was established under Osman I. Others say it was Murad I. Either way, the tradition became deeply entrenched by the 15th century, wrapped into the empire's military, spiritual, and cultural fabric like thread in a tapestry. And once it started, it never really stopped. Even after Sultan Mahmud II disbanded the Janissaries in 1826, and along with them, the Meter Corps people kept the music alive in secret. Families passed down rhythms as bedtime songs. Retired players tuned their instruments in private. And in the early 20th century, the meter was revived for ceremonial use, reclaiming its place not just in parades but in Turkish identity. The music always finds a way. Now the sky is streaked with purple and gold, the stew smells stronger, and the drums have grown softer. You lie back, letting your eyes rest, while the zurna twirls through one final descending melody, like a feather falling through air. Somewhere nearby, a drummer yawns and mimes sleep with both hands under his cheek. The others laugh quietly. The beat never stops, but it can slow, can soften, can stretch like dough pulled in sleepy hands. You think again of the apprentice's words music for the return, not just from battle, from day to night, from noise to stillness, from waking to dreams. You close your eyes, just for a moment. You're not sure how long your eyes have been closed. Maybe just a blink, maybe long enough for the shadows to shift. But when you open them again, the world has softened even more. The campfire near the band is glowing low, and the musicians have moved into a more circular formation and arrangement, not for spectacle, but for companionship. They're not playing now, not really. They're humming, murmuring, running their fingers over strings and drum heads without quite making noise, as if they're tuning the air, not the instruments. You stretch your legs and rise, padding quietly closer. No one stops you. You get the sense that the boundary between audience and band has been blurred for centuries. This isn't a concert so much as a tradition, a ritual that gathers everyone near, even strangers. As you settle in again, you notice someone warming a strange-looking reed instrument. It's not the usual zurna, a curved wooden neck, a tiny bell at the end, and holes lined in silver. You glance at a nearby janissary who whispers, "That's a nay." Not always part of meter, but sometimes, when the night asks for it. And tonight, the night has asked politely. The nay player lifts it to his lips and breathes in, not a note, not yet, just a breath. Then it starts. A single tone, long and low and impossibly fragile, like someone sighing across a desert. You feel it in your ribs, in your spine, in that quiet corner of your brain that only wakes up when everything else starts to drift away. The melody that follows is meditative. It coils like incense smoke, tracing spirals in your thoughts. The band follows softly, not with a march, but with a taxima, free-form improvisation, different every time, shaped by mood, moonlight, and memory. The rhythm drips in slowly from a hand drum, maybe a bendir each beat arriving like a soft knock at a door you read too sleepy to answer. One of the older men begins to sing, a voice worn and beautiful, gravel soft and steady. He's singing in Ottoman Turkish, a language no longer spoken in daily life, but rich with vowels that open like lanterns. You don't understand the words, but somehow you still get it. A song of longing, of home, of remembering your mother's kitchen, your brother's laughter, your first bowl of warm rice on a cold morning. It's not a military anthem. It's not a celebration. It's something in between, a musical exhale. You lean back again, arms crossed behind your head, watching the stars blink into view like shy musicians joining a jam session. The Janissary beside you nods at the sky. We used to call the stars Askralarin, Gislari, the soldier's eyes. Watching over us, you blink slowly. That ... almost makes sense. The Ottomans believed music wasn't just entertainment, it was medicine. Each mode, each scale, called makamwas, said to have a different effect on the body. Some cured melancholy, others calmed the heart. One particular makam senyo was especially known for helping people fall asleep. You can't help but smile. Maybe that's what this is, a sleeping pill in musical form. The scholar inside your mind perks up. Historians still debate, it says, in a dusty British accent, whether this belief was genuinely medical or merely symbolic. But the rest of you waves that voice away like a mosquito. Tonight, you believe it. Whatever this makam is, it's definitely doing something. Your breathing has slowed. Your jaw has unclenched. Your thoughts are walking, not sprinting. The musicians shift again. The singer falls silent, and the instruments fade back to breath level. A lone oud picks up the thread, now a fretless lute with a honeyed tone. You can hear his fingers slide along the wood, coaxing out notes like secrets. The oud has no sharp corners, just curves, like the body of the song itself. Someone claps once, very softly, and the rhythm changes barely, a little faster, a little more awake. The shift feels like someone gently nudging you before dawn, whispering that coffee's almost ready. You remember a story someone told earlier about how Sultan Mehmed II once had the band play for an entire week straight, not in battle, but in mourning after a great loss. The music wasn't meant to celebrate or to charge. It was meant to hold grief, to stretch it out until it became manageable, until it could be folded up. You wonder if that's what's happening here. Not grief, maybe, but some kind of holding. These sleepy songs aren't trying to tell you what to feel. They're just saying, you don't have to feel it alone. It's nearly midnight now, and the camp has quieted almost completely. Somewhere, a donkey sneezes. A few soldiers chuckle. Someone plays 3 accidental notes on the zurna, followed by a sheepish shrug. The apprentice drummer snores softly nearby, his little drum still nestled on his lap like a pillow. You catch a whiff of frankincense from the ceremonial tent. It mixes with the last tendrils of salep and firewood. The air itself seems to hum in tune now. You realize you've been breathing in rhythm with the drumbeat for at least 5 minutes. No one told you to. Your body just joined the orchestra. You close your eyes again. You let the music carry you. Somewhere behind your eyelids, the ney is still whispering, and the oud is still spinning its gentle web. The stars blink slower. Even the earth seems to exhale. The Janissaries are at rest. The band is at peace. The songs are still marching, but now only toward dreams. You're not sure how long you've been asleep, or if you ever fully were. It's the kind of half-dreaming that comes when music and night take turns holding your thoughts. But now, the tempo stirs just a bit and you open your eyes to see something different. The Janissaries have shifted formation. It's not a battle stands nothing, so sharp or serious, but they're standing in two tidy rows, holding their instruments loosely, like old friends preparing for a rehearsal rather than soldiers about to march. In the center, a young man places a tall metal standard into the ground, one of the legendary tucks, the sacred horsehair banners of the Ottoman army. You blink. Is this ceremonial or just daily practice? Turns out, in the world of the Janissary band, those two things often blurred together. The Metter wasn't just a musical group. It was part military engine, part spiritual ceremony, part theatrical display. Their processions were like open-air pageants, loud, majestic, strangely calming once you got past the brass. This particular scene feels like a dress rehearsal for a sultan's grand entrance or a weekly Tuesday. The ensemble begins slowly. The davul, that deep, two-headed bass drum, leads the charge. It's massive, strapped across the chest like a sleeping ox, played with two sticks, one thick and club-like, the other thin and flexible. The thick one gives you thunder, the thin one that gives you rain. Boom, tack, boom. It's simple at first, then grows, layering over itself like braided rope. As the rhythm stabilizes, the zurnas jump in sharp and nasal. Yes, but here they're tempered, not screaming like battlefield sirens. Instead, they swirl around the drums like vines, playing a familiar march. Your sleepy brain remembers the tune. This was called the Sedan Didana classic anthem, still used centuries later in military parades. Even now, it doesn't sound aggressive, just grand, almost like a lullaby dressed in armor. You notice something unexpected. The Janissaries are smiling. Not all of them, some keep a stoic face, because someone always has two but several wear small, contented grins, like men who've done this 1,000 times and still enjoy it. One tilts his head at you and winks. You reflexively check your posture. Are guests supposed to bow, march, clap? But no one seems to mind. You recall that the Metterhain, the headquarters of the Janissary band, was as much a cultural center as a military one. It wasn't just about practicing war music, it was a university of sorts. Musicians trained there, yes, but also scholars, poets, even astrologers who believed the timing of performances could align with the movements of stars. Historians still argue whether this was strategic theater or genuine mysticism, says the scholarly voice in your brain, again, wearing its tweed and adjusting tiny spectacles. You pat it gently on the head and return to the rhythm. The procession begins to move, but not toward battle, toward the garden. You follow as the Janissaries march in slow, rhythmic steps, looping around flower beds and reflecting pools. The musicians never stop. They keep time with their feet, their breaths, their heartbeats. You've heard of marching bands, sure, but this feels more like a slow-motion parade designed by a dream. In Ottoman times, the Metter would sometimes lead funeral processions or festival parades. They played at weddings, at royal dinners, at the openings of new bridges or baths. Their music wasn't always about war, it was about marking time, sanctifying it, giving sound to the otherwise silent milestones of empire. The band turns, heading back toward the central courtyard. As they pass, one of the younger musicians peels off and joins you for a moment. He's carrying a kevgin, a kind of jangly stick adorned with bells. He lifts it lightly, shaking it just once. The bells chime like distant wind chimes, caught in a hesitant breeze. Try it, he offers, handing it to you. You raise the kevgin, and give it a gentle shake. The bells answer like they know your name, not loudly, not brightly, but with just enough shimmer to make your skin prickle. He nods. Every instrument in meter has a reason. The kevgan chases away fear. You consider that for a moment. Fear chasing bells, of course. Why wouldn't an empire have its own musical talismans? You keep walking with him for a while, the bells swinging softly in your hand. Behind you, the band is winding down again. You hear the melody slow, then fragment into smaller pieces. The drums tap instead of pound. The zurnas sigh instead of sing. As the final notes trail off, the standard bearer lifts the tuk from the earth and rests it across his shoulders. The Janissaries don't disperse immediately. They stand still, letting silence settle back into place like snowfall. No applause, no bows, just quiet pride. You turn back to your companion, but he's already rejoined the band. You look down at the kevgan, still in your hand. Do you return it? Apparently not. One of the older men gestures for you to keep it. Maybe it'll guard your dreams, he says. You nod, unsure whether to thank him or just keep your voice low. You head back to your resting spot by the fire. The coals are glowing now, like sleepy eyes half closed. You lie back, the kevgan still tucked in your hand. Above you, the stars keep marching in their own slow procession. Not fast, not fierce, just steady. Boom, tack. You can still hear it faintly in your chest, a memory of rhythm. The Janissary band plays on, even when it's silent. By now, your body feels comfortably heavy, like a soft woolen cloak draped over your limbs. You're not entirely sure how long you've been lying here, warmed by the embers. The kevgan, still in your grasp like a borrowed talisman. The courtyard has grown darker, quieter, but not silent. There's a shift in the air, not colder, just different. A nighttime hush, the kind you get just before a snowfall or a distant call to prayer. One of the Janissaries walks past, holding a long-handled incense brazier, gently fanning scented smoke through the air. It smells faintly of rosewater and sandalwood, curling upward like invisible calligraphy. You watch it rise until it disappears into the stars. Here, music isn't just played, it's summoned. You slowly sit up again, drawn by something echoing softly through the corridor ahead. A quieter kind of music. No drums this time, just the faint plucking of strings, the sigh of flutes, the occasional whisper of a bell. You follow it like a moth tracing candlelight. This part of the complex feels older, more hidden, maybe even a little forbidden, but in that curious, dreamlike way where rules don't fully apply. The hallway walls are painted in deep ochres and lapis blues, patterns winding like ivy. You duck through a small archway and arrive in a vaulted room where the sound is coming from. Inside, the Janissaries are gone, or rather, transformed. They're no longer in full military dress. Their helmets are off, their shoulders relaxed. Most have changed into light indoor robes, soft cotton dyed with natural pigments, mossy greens, twilight purples, the occasional rusty red. Some sit cross-legged on woven mats. A few recline, sipping tea from curved tulip glasses. And in the center of the room, a new group of musicians. Not the meter proper, but an off-duty version. They play ney flutes and ouds, whispery kanans, and even the rabab, an old bowed instrument that sounds like a cello dipped in honey. It's soft, layered, intricate, more lullaby than anthem. This, you realize, is the other face of Janissary music, the one rarely talked about in textbooks. The private, reflective kind. played in barracks after long days, or in quiet evenings when the Sultan wasn't watching. It wasn't about war or spectacle. It was about unwinding. You nestle into a cushion near the edge, letting the music wash over you like warm bathwater. A young man plays a slow, mournful tune on the nayet's breathy sound reminiscent of wind through a cracked window. Legend says the nay's voice is that of longing, of exile. It's an instrument of mystics and melancholy. Historians still argue whether this softer music was officially part of Janissary life or simply tolerated. That inner, scholarly voice murmurs, but even it sounds sleepier now. You notice a pair of musicians exchanging smiles mid-song. They're playing entirely in sync. One plucks while the other slides, and they nod together like an unspoken joke just passed between them. It feels intimate, but not exclusive. They seem perfectly content to let you witness it. A silver tray of dried apricots and walnuts is passed around. One of the Janissaries gestures politely toward you, as if to say, "Why not? You're practically one of us now." You take a handful and taste the sweetness and salt together. The texture grounds you, anchoring you in the present, even as the music tries to float you away. They begin another tune, this one with a gently repeating rhythm, like the swing of a hammock or the tide lapping against a dock. A few Janissaries close their eyes, letting the melody rock them like a cradle. Your thoughts drift with the tune. You remember hearing that some of the earliest Western composers, Mozart, Haydn, were fascinated by Ottoman music. They borrowed bits of it, the drums, the zurna-like oboes, even the metallic crescendos. They called it alla turca. It was fashionable in Vienna parlors, but stripped of its slower soul, its sleepy heart. Those composers may have known the noise of the meter, but probably never this version. The song shifts key subtle, almost imperceptible, but enough to change the mood from wistful to gently optimistic. The oud player smiles. You realize they're improvising now, weaving themes back and forth like night weavers. There are no sheet music stands, just listening, responding, trust. You look down at the kevgin in your lap. You lift it slightly and give a soft jingle barely audible. No one mocks you. One of the musicians even nods in approval. Somewhere, a kettle boils, steam hisses, the scent of mint and chamomile tickles your nose. A second tray appears, this one with cups of tea. It's passed with quiet reverence. No cheers, no clinks, just a shared understanding that night is better with something warm to hold. The music continues, and a Janissary near you leans back on his hands and softly begins to hum along, not the melody, but something beside it, a counterpoint. It feels spontaneous and practiced at the same time. You find yourself humming, too. Just a little. Your voice is a whisper, really, but it's part of the moment now. They let the song drift to its natural end, no sharp, final chord, just a trailing off like breath after laughter. There's a moment of silence, not applause, not even nods, just ... stillness. And then someone starts tuning a santera, hammered dulcimer, gentle and tinkling, like starlight scattered across marble. Another song is beginning, but you find your eyelids heavy. You lie down where you are, cradled by cushions, surrounded by the soft rustle of robes, the clink of tea glasses, the distant harmony of strings. The air smells faintly of lemon balm and old cedar wood. You don't need to know the name of this song. You don't even need to remember this room tomorrow. All that matters now is that you're here, and so are they. The room seems to breathe with you now, slow, even almost tidal. Somewhere, someone yawns, and it feels like permission. A shared softness passes among the Janissaries, and you, curled like a contented cat among their cushions, drift deeper into the cocoon of music and warmth. But the night has more stories to tell. Outside, the call of a night bird floats over the rooftops. A guard's sandals scuff gently on a nearby walkway, and the faintest chime echoes from a wind bell somewhere up high. It reminds you that this world doesn't sleep. Not entirely, it dozes in shifts. Eventually, the music inside the room tapers to an unspoken pause. The musicians stretch and exchange sleepy glances, like cats after a nap. Some quietly gather their instruments, while others reach for small, lacquered cases tucked under the cushions, cases that glint faintly with mother-of-pearl inlays. Inside, you realize, are notebooks, but not of the usual kind. These are melody books, song collections, sketches, maybe even dreams. They're filled with Ottoman notation and ancient looping script that looks like vines growing across the page. Some contain lyrics, others just ideas, half-written scales, mood notes, reminders, like play slower after the second verse. A few margins have doodles, a cat curled around a zurna, or a tiny teacup beside a sleepy eye. You're invited to peek at one, and as your fingers trace the careful ink lines, you can't help but marvel. Even in war, these men preserved beauty. They weren't just warriors or musicians. They were archivists of feeling, chroniclers of sound. Historians still debate whether these private pieces ever made it into public meter performances. Your inner voice murmurs again. Some argue that much of this music is lost, handed down only orally, never formally recorded, and maybe that's true. But here now, the memory is alive. A Janissary sitting beside you begins to explain, very softly, that their songs had different moods for different hours. Morning required bright tempos, flutes, brisk percussion, something to match the rising sun. Afternoon leaned into rhythm, ideal for marches or military drills. But at night, night belonged to softness, to sorrow, to memory. He tells you of Farafisa musical mode, meant to evoke peace and clarity, or Huzama scales so mournful it could make grown men misty-eyed. Not from sadness exactly, but from remembering something you couldn't quite put into words. You ask without speaking what kind of music this is. Now, the Janissary chuckles quietly. Tonight, this is Suzadil, he says, a mode for reflective evenings, and for letting go. Letting go. You lean back, let the word echo, and gaze upward at the small domed ceiling above you. The ceiling is painted like the night sky, not symbolically, but in tender, intricate detail. Tiny silver stars, swirling constellations, even a sliver of a moon. You squint and realize they're placed precisely. This isn't decorative, it's astronomical. You're lying beneath a map of the sky. Some say the Janissaries learned star lore not just for navigation, but for rhythm. Certain modes and tempos were chosen to match the mood of the heavens. Mars meant one thing, Venus another. It's not confirmed, of course, but it fits. A sleepy joke from across the room breaks your reverie. Play that one again. The one that made Ahmed cry into his pilaf last week. Laughter bubbles quietly. Even Ahmed chuckles and mutters something about dust in his eyes. But sure enough, the flautist begins to play that exact tune. It's wistful, but sweet. The kind of music that makes you want to write a letter to someone you've already forgiven. There's a softness to these men you hadn't expected. They're not always the stern, stoic warriors portrayed in old paintings. Here, they're human, multifaceted. They sing songs about distant homelands, about childhood games in Anatolian fields, about lost dogs and found poems. One Janissary tells a story between songs, just a few sentences, barely above a whisper. He once marched all the way to Hungary and back. Not a scratch on him, but the only thing he remembers clearly is a bakery in Buda that made apricot bread so good it brought tears to his eyes. He never found it again. Another story emerges. A man recalls how he joined the Janissaries not from capture, but by volunteering. His village had little else, and he'd heard they had music and books and shoes, he adds, showing off a surprisingly fine pair. Everyone laughs, even you. Soon after, a small wooden drum appears, not a davul, but something quieter, more intimate. A Janissary begins to tap out a slow rhythm, almost like a heartbeat. Another layers in a soft chime, then a shaker. One by one, the room builds a lullaby out of almost nothing. You close your eyes, letting it wrap around you like woven silk. When you open them again, one of the youngest musicians is drawing a simple line sketch in his notebook. It's of the room. You spot your own feet in it, just the edge of your robes, the tip of your kevgan resting beside you. He adds a curl of incense smoke above your head. It's oddly touching. You never catch his name, but you know, somehow, that centuries later, people might still talk about this music, about the night songs of the Janissaries, the ones without drums, the ones without medals, the ones that weren't meant to conquer, but to comfort, and they work. Oh, how they work. Your limbs feel like they're melting gently into the cushions. Every breath is matched by a sigh in the air around you. Every blink grows heavier. The music dims. Only the stars remain. The air cools slightly as the night deepens, and your breath slows to match the rhythm of the quiet world around you. The Janissaries begin to fold their instruments with the care one might handle fragile memories, cheese, a thread in a tapestry woven over centuries. You remain seated, feeling like a guest who's overstayed just enough to witness the unspoken farewell. A soft murmur arises, a gentle shuffle of robes and soft footsteps crossing the stone floor. A few of the men drift toward small niches in the walls where delicate lanterns hang, their amber glow flickering like a heartbeat in the dimness. Before the lights dim completely, you notice a small wooden box resting near the corner ornate, with brass fittings and carvings of crescents and stars. A Janissary slides it open, revealing a collection of tiny metal charms and bells, each tied to a thin leather strap. He picks one up, a silver bell shaped like a crescent moon, and shakes it lightly. The sound is light, tinkling, like the laughter of a distant child in a garden. This, you learn, is a sleep bell, an old talisman believed to soothe restless minds and bring calm dreams. You are offered the chance to hold it. The bell feels cool and smooth in your hand, and when rung, it lets loose a sound that seems to linger in the air, wrapping around you like a whispering lullaby. Historians still argue whether these charms were more than superstitions. Your inner voice reminds you. Some suggest they were practical tools in ritual music. Others think they were personal talismans for the soldiers. Whatever the truth, in this quiet moment, it doesn't matter. The Janissary who showed you the box speaks softly about the power of sound, the way certain notes and rhythms can ease the mind, slow the heart, and invite rest. He mentions the idea of sonic medicine, a concept not unique to the Ottoman world, but present in many ancient cultures. You recall reading once that some early Ottoman healers believed music could mend ailments both of the body and the soul. It was used to calm fever, ease headaches, and even to accompany herbal remedies. Maybe this is why the Janissaries prized their nighttime music so dearly. It wasn't just entertainment, but therapy. Your eyelids flutter. The room darkens further as the last of the lanterns are extinguished. The sounds shrink to the softest murmur, a gentle tapping of fingers on strings, the faint breath of flutes, and the occasional bell that seems to drift from a faraway place. You realize you've been holding your breath without noticing, and now you let it go, slow and steady. The Janissaries begin to chant not the thunderous battle cries of legend, but something softer, almost a whisper. It's a call and response, a gentle back and forth like waves kissing the shore. The chant is ancient and almost indecipherable, woven with a language older than the empire itself. You feel it more than hear it, vibrating through the floor and into your bones. It's a sonic embrace. A subtle smile tugs at the corner of your mouth as you think, well, you probably won't survive a day in the Janissary Corps, but at least you'll go out soothed. The music shifts again, settling into a rhythm so slow and deliberate that your mind can barely follow. It's like a heartbeat slowed down to the pace of night itself. You are wrapped in it. Outside, the stars shift imperceptibly, as if watching over this tiny moment suspended in time, and you drift closer to sleep than you've been all day. As the chant fades into a gentle hum, your senses soften. The musky scent of aged wood mingles with faint wisps of sandalwood incense, curling lazily toward the domed ceiling painted like the night sky you admired earlier. The walls, adorned with intricate tilework in soft blues and greens, seem to breathe with quiet stories of battles and banquets long past. You realize the Janissary band's music isn't merely background noise, a living thread connecting you to centuries of ritual and routine. These melodies accompanied triumphs, mourning, and moments in between, grounding soldiers who were often swept far from home. One Janissary, sitting nearby, leans in and quietly shares an odd tradition. Before every major campaign, the band would perform a special ceremony called the Metar Kasidesi. It was a combination of music, prayer, and poetic recitation designed to unite the troops' spirits. The ceremony's melodies were said to be so potent they could embolden men and unsettle enemies even before swords clashed. You smile to yourself, imagining a general waiting nervously behind his tent as the first notes drift across the campfire glow. Historians still debate whether these sounds had a psychological edge or were just epic marketing. The voice in your head jokes softly. Beyond military use, the music had a domestic side too. You learn about the Janissaries' quieter hours, when musicians gathered to play soothing tunes meant for lullabies or gentle storytelling, an aspect often overshadowed by their martial reputation. One player lifts a ney flute to his lips, exhaling a slow, breathy note that seems to ripple through the air like a gentle stream. The sound is fragile and ancient, almost as if the flute is telling a secret only the night can understand. You think about how this contrasts with the Janissaries' fearsome image, the hard-eyed soldiers, wielding massive drums and brass instruments that thundered on battlefields. Here, they are simply men sharing music, laughter, and perhaps a little longing. The Janissary next to you quietly recounts a curious story. Apparently, some musicians were so skilled they could play melodies, mimicking bird calls or the rustling of leaves, weaving nature itself into their soundscapes. It's a lovely detail, blending the human and natural worlds in a way that feels almost magical. Your eyes drift closed briefly, lulled by the soft repetition of the ney's breathy tones. You catch yourself wondering if, somewhere in the empire, a janissary once composed a lullaby just like this to soothe a restless child, or maybe even himself. The band moves on, layering gentle percussion with soft string plucks, creating a delicate rhythm that carries you deeper into the night's calm. This is the other side of the janissaries, the musicians who sang softly to keep fear at bay, who embraced beauty as fiercely as battle. And now, it's your turn to rest within that embrace. You drift in the quiet glow of that flute's last lingering note, the soft thrum of a tambourine tapping like a heartbeat in the dark. The room seems smaller, now more intimate, like you've stepped inside a secret shared among old friends who speak mostly in song and silence. It's easy to forget the world beyond these walls, the clatter of horses' hooves and the clang of armor. Here, the music is a refuge, a place where time folds gently in on itself, and every note feels like a step deeper into calm. One of the janissaries gestures toward a large, slightly battered frame, drum the devoul. You'd expect it to dominate with booming power, but tonight it's coaxed into a whisper, a soft pulse that brushes the edges of your consciousness rather than shaking the floor. They call this style tefras, the unwinding music, meant to ease the transition from wakefulness to sleep. It's a kind of musical sigh, a slow exhale that tells your body it's okay to let go now. You learn the drum's skin is made from goat hide, carefully treated and stretched over the frame, sometimes kissed by smoke to give it a unique tone. The janissary laughs softly when you ask if the goats were willing participants, and you realize, even centuries ago, the jokes about animal cooperation were alive and well. In the flickering light, a small group picks up their instruments, a zurna, here, a kemence, there, but instead of bold, brash sounds, they weave a delicate tapestry of sound. The zurna's piercing cry is softened by skilled fingerwork, turning sharp notes into gentle swoops. You imagine a cool night breeze brushing through the Ottoman camp, carrying these sounds across sleeping tents like a lullaby for the entire army. The idea that warriors, men trained in the harshest of conditions, could nurture such tender music strikes you as almost contradictory. But maybe that's the point. Maybe music was their soft armor. One janissary leans in, whispering a thought. Some scholars believe the band's sleep songs were in just for the soldiers. They might have been designed to soothe local villagers, or even inspire peace in conquered towns. Music as diplomacy, soft and persistent. Historians still debate whether these songs were more healing or strategic, your internal voice muses. Either way, it's clear that the power of sound stretched far beyond the battlefield. You begin to feel the slow pull of restiness fading, replaced by a warm heaviness. The music, the stories, the shared smiles, they weave together into a gentle net that catches you softly. Your eyelids flutter again, this time heavier, as if the music itself is cradling you closer to sleep. And in this moment, the janissaries are not soldiers. They are keepers of calm, guardians of night's quiet. You let the last notes wash over you. The room darkens even further, and the faintest hint of dawn feels like a distant dream you're not ready to meet. The music slows, breaths lengthen, and your mind drifts like a leaf on a slow river. You're reminded how the Janissary's role wasn't just to fight, but to live in, to make life a bit gentler amid the empire's often harsh realities. Between military drills and campaigns, their music marked the rhythms of daily life, from dawn prayers to evening rest. One Janissary tells you about the Metterhain, the music hall, where the band rehearsed and bonded. It wasn't just a practice space, but a social hub, echoing with laughter, light teasing, and the occasional friendly debate over the best tune to soothe a worried soldier's mind. You imagine the scene, the clatter of instruments, tuning, the rustle of robes, the low hum of conversations about the day's march or the latest imperial news. It's a human moment tucked inside an empire, often remembered only for its grandeur and conquests. In these halls, the Janissaries played more than war songs. They nurtured melodies that could mend the spirit. Some of these lullabies were passed down orally, their origins lost to time, but their soothing power enduring. You learn about an unusual tradition before sleep. Some musicians would play keman solos so soft, their notes sounded like a breeze brushing through the cypress trees outside the palace walls. This practice might have been less about music and more about mindfulness, a kind of ancient meditation through sound. Historians still debate whether this was an early form of music therapy or simply a comforting ritual. Your inner voice reminds you with a gentle nudge. The thought settles warmly in your chest. Outside, the first pale light touches the horizon, but you're not quite ready to rise with it. Instead, you linger in the quiet cocoon of sound and shadow. The Janissary beside you hums softly, a tune so simple and pure it feels like a sigh from the past. It carries with it the weight of centuries, of lives lived between war and peace, joy and sorrow. You let the melody sink in, each note a soft step deeper into rest. This is the lullaby of the Ottoman nighthand invitation to close your eyes, to breathe slowly, and to dream gently of distant lands and forgotten songs. Your breath slows, the world grows quiet, and for now that is enough. The morning light begins to stretch its fingers into the room, soft and hesitant, as if not wanting to disturb the fragile peace lingering from the night. Your senses remain wrapped in the gentle cocoon of melodies, and the Janissaries, now more relaxed, begin to share stories of their music's curious journeys beyond the Ottoman borders. You hear about how these sleepy tunes traveled along the vast silk routes, mingling with sounds from far-flung lands, from the highlands of Persia to the bazaars of Central Asia. Music, you realize, was a universal language, quietly shaping and reshaping itself, like a river finding new channels. One story catches your attention. The Janissary band's music was adopted by European courts, inspiring composers like Mozart and Beethoven to weave Ottoman motifs into their own symphonies. It's a charming twist to the usual tales of empire and conflict, showing how culture trickled gently across borders despite politics and wars. You chuckle softly, imagining a stiff European noble tapping a foot to rhythms born in the heart of Istanbul. Historians still debate whether these influences were respectful exchanges or exotic appropriations. You muse quietly. Beyond courts and concert halls, the Janissary tunes also found their way into folk traditions. Villagers in distant Anatolian valleys learned to mimic the rhythms and instruments. adding their own flavors to the melodies. Music became a living, breathing thing, never static, always evolving. You imagine an old woman teaching her grandchildren a lullaby with hidden hints of those ancient war drums, turning tales of battle into songs of comfort. The Janissaries describe how their music held a dual nature, fierce enough to inspire courage on the battlefield, but tender enough to cradle weary souls at day's end. You notice the band has slowed again, instruments lowering to nearly imperceptible whispers. The sounds seem to dissolve into the warm air like the fading scent of rosewater, inviting you to sink deeper into your dreams. As your breathing matches the rhythm, you reflect on how music, in all its forms, can be a bomb knot, just a battle cry. The Janissary Band's sleepy songs are a reminder. Even in the heart of empire and conflict, there is room for softness, for rest, for gentle goodnight wishes carried on a breeze. And with that comforting thought, you let yourself drift once more into peaceful sleep. The soft glow of dawn gradually warms the room, but you remain nestled in the gentle fold of quiet melodies. You find yourself drawn deeper into the intimate details of the Janissary Band's daily life, the rhythms behind the rhythms, so to speak. You learn that being a Janissary wasn't just about marching and music. It involved strict routines, rituals designed to keep the soldiers disciplined yet balanced. Their days began long before sunrise, with morning prayers followed by training and, of course, rehearsals for the band's diverse repertoire. Interestingly, these rehearsals sometimes doubled as a form of gentle exercise, breathing techniques and vocal warm-ups that historians speculate might have helped maintain the musicians' stamina. Historians still debate whether these sessions were mainly military drills or early vocal therapy. The thought drifts softly into your mind. A Janissary nearby smiles as he recounts a quirky tradition before battle. The band members often carried small bundles of herbs believed to calm nerves and sharpen hearing. You imagine the subtle scent of rosemary or sage wafting amid the clatter of armor, a natural way to soothe jitters. The band's repertoire was vast, ranging from bold, triumphant anthems to the delicate sleep songs you've come to cherish. It's fascinating how the same group could switch so effortlessly between stirring courage and inviting rest. You picture the Janissaries sharing quiet moments after a long day, seated around a flickering fire, their instruments resting nearby, exchanging stories and songs that weren't meant for anyone else. Songs that told of homes left behind, hopes, and whispered dreams. One of the quieter members hums a tune so soft it feels like a breath against your cheek, reminding you of the night breeze rustling through olive groves. The band's softer songs weren't just for sleep. They were a way to connect, to heal, and to remember. The Janissaries were, after all, human first, warriors second. As the sun inches higher, you notice the subtle shifts in light and sound, a natural cue that the day is beckoning. But for now, wrapped in this cocoon of sound and story, you are safe to linger a while longer in the tender embrace of the Ottoman night. The gentle warmth of the morning sun filters softly through the lattice windows, casting delicate patterns that seem to dance slowly across the floor. You remain enveloped in the calm presence of the Janissary Band, feeling the steady pulse of their music weaving through the air like a comforting whisper. Tonight's journey has carried you from the booming drums of the battlefield to the fragile breath of the ney flute, and now you find yourself learning about the instruments, themselves, their stories, their quirks, and their surprising roles in everyday Ottoman life. Take the zurna, for example, a double reed woodwind with a sound so piercing that it's often described as the call of the wild. Yet, within the band's softer pieces, skilled players could coax it into a more delicate voice, evoking both joy and melancholy. The instrument's wooden body was sometimes intricately carved, telling its own story through visual artistry. Then there's the kemans, a small bowed string instrument held upright and played with a delicate bow. Its sound is hauntingly beautiful, like a lullaby whispered under moonlight. Interestingly, the kemans was popular not only with janissaries, but also among sailors along the Black Sea, suggesting a fascinating cross-cultural exchange of melodies and motifs. You smile, imagining a tired sailor humming a janissary tune as he steers his boat home through misty waters. It's a quiet reminder of how music can bind diverse people together, even across great distances and different lives. One janissary confides that some musicians believed their instruments had spirits, energies that could be soothed or awakened, depending on how they were played. While historians still debate whether this belief influenced performance style or was simply poetic folklore, it adds an enchanting layer to the music you've been hearing. As the band transitions from soft solo passages back into a gentle group rhythm, you feel the steady cadence begin to carry your thoughts away, much like the rivers that once flowed through the Ottoman lands. The music is both ancient and alive, an ever-changing river that invites you to drift gently downstream, surrendering to the peaceful flow. And so, with each pluck and breath, you move closer to the quiet edge of waking dreams. The soft echo of the kemans fades gently, replaced by the warm hum of a frame drum deaf its rhythm, slow and steady like the heartbeat of the earth itself. You're beginning to notice how these sounds shape the atmosphere, layering comfort onto comfort, like a quilt stitched from centuries-old melodies. As you sink deeper into this serene soundscape, the janissaries share stories of the meter uniform's bright, colorful robes and tall hats that contrasted sharply with the soft sounds they played. The paradox fascinates you, warriors dressed in flamboyant colors, producing music that could coax even the most restless minds toward calm. One musician explains that these uniforms weren't just for show. They were symbols of pride and unity, designed to lift spirits and intimidate foes. Still, you can't help but imagine a janissary adjusting his towering hat, sighing softly as he prepares to play a lullaby rather than a battle march. The daily routine of a janissary was a curious blend of discipline and artistry. You retold about their early morning rituals that included not only physical training, but also spiritual exercises, chanting, meditation, and, naturally, music. Historians still debate whether the music served as a form of psychological preparation, or was simply a soothing ritual after a harsh day. Your mind reflects. You learn that some janissary songs contained subtle coded messages passed quietly between soldiers to coordinate movements or boost morale without alerting enemies. It's a reminder that music was more than art, it was a vital tool in survival. Tonight's melodies feel like a gentle invitation to join a long line of listeners who found comfort and courage in these sounds long after the last note faded. Your eyelids grow heavier, each drumbeat syncing with your slowing heartbeat. The room, the music, and the history merge into a warm lullaby, carrying you softly toward sleep's embrace. The rhythm of the daff drum slowly dims to a heartbeat you can barely hear as the Janissary band's music drifts into a hush. You feel yourself floating in a gentle haze, as if the soft notes themselves are wrapping you in a cozy shawl, warm and familiar. The Janissary's history isn't just in battles or grand palaces, it's in these quiet moments between moments. You hear about the ways the band adapted as the Ottoman Empire evolved, absorbing influences from neighboring cultures while preserving their unique voice. One Janissary reminisces about the time the band accompanied a diplomatic mission to the Persian court. There, they exchanged tunes with local musicians, creating hybrid melodies that blurred borders and built bridges. It's a fascinating example of music's power to transcend politics and conflict. Historians still debate whether these exchanges influenced Ottoman military music or were mainly symbolic gestures. You muse, feeling the gentle tug of curiosity. The Janissary band also played at celebrations, weddings, festivals, and religious ceremonies, offering a musical thread woven through the fabric of Ottoman society. Their melodies ranged from exuberant dances to hushed prayers, each suited to the mood of the moment. You imagine a softly lit room filled with laughter and music, where the band's quieter pieces offer a serene counterpoint to the night's festivities. These peaceful songs were sometimes used to lull children to sleep, turning tales of empire into gentle dreams. You smile at the thought of a Janissary father softly humming a wartime tune transformed into a bedtime lullaby. As the band's final notes fade into silence, you feel the weight of centuries settle like a soft blanket over your mind. You are invited to rest now, held by the comforting legacy of sound and story. Sleep comes closer with each breath. The quiet silence that follows the band's final notes is like a soft pause, breath held gently before the next melody begins. You find yourself drifting through memories of the Janissaries' everyday lives. The small moments tucked between grand history. You learn about the Janissary coffee houses, where music mingled with the rich aroma of dark, strong coffee. These places were more than just spots to sip and chat. They were cultural hubs where stories, songs, and news flowed freely. It's charming to imagine a Janissary tapping a soft rhythm on his coffee cup, rehearsing a new tune in a haze of steam and conversation. Some historians suggest that the sounds of the coffee house clinking cups, murmurs, even the occasional laugh helped shape the softer side of Janissary music. Historians still debate how much these social spaces influenced the band's evolving style. Your mind whispers thoughtfully. You also hear about the Janissary women, a lesser-known part of the story. While the soldiers themselves were all men, their families and communities played vital roles in preserving the musical traditions and passing them on through generations. These women, often skilled musicians themselves, adapted the Janissary melodies into lullabies and folk songs, ensuring that the music lived beyond the barracks and battlefields. You smile, imagining a quiet village at dusk, where a mother hums a Janissary tune as she rocks her child to sleep, the melody weaving history and love into the fabric of everyday life. The gentle rhythms and stories of this rich musical tradition wrap around you like a soft shawl. And as your thoughts grow slower, your breath deeper, you sense the day's end settling fully, inviting you to rest. The echoes of the Janissary band linger softly, a timeless soundtrack for peaceful dreams. A calm hush settles over the scene as the Janissary band's melodies seem to melt into the evening air. You feel yourself pulled gently toward the close of this journey, your mind softening like warm wax under the flame. Before you fully drift away, you learn about the unique way the Janissary band balanced tradition with change. They held fast to their roots' military discipline and Ottoman musical modes, while also embracing new instruments and styles introduced through trade and conquest. One musician recalls the introduction of the European clarinet into the ensemble during the 19th century, a moment that sparked both excitement and quiet debate among band members. Historians still debate whether these changes diluted the Janissary identity or revitalized it. You think, the question lingering like a soft echo. The band also played a key role in Ottoman ceremonies marking life's passages, marriages, and even funerals. Their music carried a gentle solemnity in these moments, a tender reminder of life's rhythms beyond the battlefield. You picture a procession winding slowly through a quiet town, the soft drum beats marking time with the beating of hearts. And yet, despite their power and prestige, the Janissaries faced an uncertain future. By the early 19th century, political shifts and reforms challenged their existence, leading to their eventual disbandment. Still, their music survived, woven into the cultural tapestry of Turkey and beyond, a soothing echo of a bygone era. As the band plays their final, almost whispered notes, you feel your eyelids grow heavy, your thoughts slowing to a peaceful rhythm. The gentle songs of the Ottoman Janissaries guide you softly closer to rest. The last notes of the Janissary band's music drift into silence, leaving behind a delicate stillness that settles softly around you, like the final page of a beloved book gently closing. You are carried into the quiet, feeling the weight of history and melody merge into one gentle, restful moment. As the Janissary story draws to a close, you recall how their music was not just a soundtrack for war, but a soothing balm for the soul, a reminder that even in times of conflict, humans seek comfort and connection through song. You think of the Janissaries gathered under the stars, their instruments resting by their sides as they shared whispered tales of home and hope. Their melodies carried not just orders, but memories, dreams, and the promise of peace. This blend of discipline and tenderness created a unique Lagotia musical tradition that still whispers softly through the ages, inviting you to rest and dream. As your breath slows and your mind quiets, you feel yourself floating gently toward sleep, wrapped in the warm embrace of ancient rhythms. Remember, these sounds were once part of real lives, real moments, quiet acts of humanity in a vast empire. And now, as the night deepens, you are free to surrender to the peaceful lullaby they leave behind. Rest well, dear listener, carried gently on the wings of history's softest songs. The quiet darkness embraces you fully now, and your thoughts grow slow and soft, like feathers settling on a still pond. Imagine the gentle rustle of leaves, the faint murmur of distant waters, and the last warm glow of a fading sunset. All is calm, all is gentle. Let the weight of the day dissolve with each breath, your body sinking deeper into restful peace. No worries, no rushing, only the soft pulse of quiet moments passing slowly by. You are safe here, wrapped in the warmth of story and song, drifting effortlessly toward sleep's tender hold. Now, with your eyes closed, feel the whispers of history lull you onward, carrying you softly through night's embrace. Sweet dreams.